You are listening to the Your Empty Nest Coach podcast with Coach Christine, episode number 28, What Mom Should Expect During That First Semester at College and How Mom Can Help.
This podcast is for you, a mother who years ago walked away from a career to raise your child. Sure, you've been busy volunteering, carpools, maybe part-time work, and taking care of everyone. But your main gig? That has been your child. Now that they are in their later years of high school, the empty nest looms ahead for you, and it is freaking you out. I've been there, and I get it. Together, we'll turn our freaking out energy into freaking awesome energy.
Hello, my future empty nest friend. I have another guest today, and she's another podcaster who has a show that I enjoy listening to, even if it is directed toward college students. It helps me in my role as a parent of a college student to be aware of resources to share with my daughter and other parents. She has topics such as how to have your most motivated week ever and how to tackle a big assignment. That may apply to anyone, and I encourage you to take a listen to her podcast. My guest today is Katy Oliveira. Katy is the founder of Collegehood LLC and the host of the Collegehood Advice podcast, where she shares expert insights, strategies, and stories to help students thrive during college. For 15 years, she has guided thousands of college students through their collegehood in her roles as a professional academic advisor, college success coach, university administrator, and instructor. She currently helps students find out what they want to do with their life, then use their college experience to make it happen through her coaching and online programs. When she's not helping students, you can find her in a garden, on a yoga mat, or in a kitchen cooking with her friends and family in Austin, Texas. I subscribe to Katy's podcast, and I have to say one of my favorite episodes so far has been number 63, Is Your Major Causing Your Low Motivation? Definitely check out her podcast. It is fantastic, and we even talk about this specific episode in this interview. Welcome to the Your Empty Nest Coach podcast, Katy.
Thank you so much for having me on your show. I'm really excited to be here.
Likewise. So thrilled that you asked to be on. Yay. So my listener, with Katy's 15 years of experience, I thought we would cover some topics today that are important for mom and dad to understand. You might be well aware of these, but you also might have no clue. The first one I see firsthand where I work, I have to admit. Now, my parents never asked to see my college grades outside of the end of the semester or even my schedule, but that could be because back in the day, this stuff was just starting to get online. Like I had to go to a computer lab to type things. So yeah. And there was no logging in to see my grades in between classes, right? Gosh, I feel really old when I say that. So Katy, for the parents who are used to checking their students' high school grades and are possibly heavily involved in their child's education, what should they prepare for in college and how is it going to be different?
Oh, it's going to be very different. And I'm going to be honest, parents aren't going to necessarily like what I'm about to say. In fact, I gave a presentation last week where I had a parent get visibly upset when I shared this information. So I just want to put that caveat out there. One way to sort of ease us into my answer and to start to help parents gather a different frame of mind is that I know it may be really hard to see right now your teenager who is thinking about prom and staying up all night and is on their device and maybe not making the best, most responsible choices, and you fear that this is going to move forward with them into college, and some of it will. But the thing about going to college is they're not only making a transition to going to a new environment and a new school, they are also literally making the transition from a teenager to an emerging adult. So your teenager that lives in your house today, right now in May, will be an emerging adult within the next year.
I can feel my audience just like, this is why I'm here. Don't worry.
So I know, I feel the cold sweats. I understand. I have a daughter who's turning 8 and it just occurred to me she's going to be 18 in only 10 years. Right. And so I'm not there yet, but I have a lot of empathy for you. But I think that's really important for the next point. And the reason for that is because when we release them into college as parents, and I think also as educators and as a society, we perceive that we need to treat them like teenagers, and they developmentally are no longer teenagers. They are becoming emergent adults. And emerging adults literally have different neuroscientific development and needs than a teenager. And I know it's hard to imagine, but at 19, many of those needs begin. And because they're becoming emerging adults, both the federal government and universities begin to treat them like adults, which is going to require you to treat them like adults in some capacities, even if you're paying for their college experience. So instead of you being the consumer, you are not the university's client. Your student is the university's client, and you are that student's benefactor. So it might be if, like, I'm a 40-year-old person going to college and you have more money than me and you volunteer to pay for my university, that relationship is between me and you, but my relationship is with the university. Your student is the same way. Your student is a separate entity from you, and you're a benefactor. So what that means is you are the support and the resource for your student, but your student has to take the lead on everything else. So they take the lead on the organization of information, on communication, on what they do, who they talk to, how they advocate. Everything becomes in the hands of your students. And that's terrifying, but also amazing, because this is what you've been putting all your hard work toward, is making this transition to creating an amazing adult. And so now's the time for that to start to unfold. And it can be really painful and tricky.
Well, first of all, I love the benefactor thought. That is great, because I never heard that, and that explains it very well. It's very good way, because I work in enrollment and I answer phones, and I get a lot of parents that call but I'm paying, and I luckily I can say, I understand, I'm in the same boat. I get it. It is very difficult for a parent to go from that transition. So I think this is great that they can have a heads up and be prepared, and it's okay. You'll be okay. Mine went 4 years early and I'm still okay. So you can do it.
Yeah.
Fine.
Yeah. And the universities aren't just trying to be difficult. I mean, there are federal laws that are governing this, and the federal law is called FERPA, and it's the Family Education Responsibility and Privacy Act is what I believe FERPA stands for. Different universities, so this governs the privacy of a student's educational record, but it can also protect identifying information. So the moment a student enters the university, they're protected underneath this act. And so the university, there are releases you can sign both to give parents information and access, but a student can also sign documents to prevent a student from getting information and access. And also some departments have internal policies where it's just their policy not to share information with parents without the student's knowledge or presence, because the university is trying to teach your student to advocate for themselves, and the relationship with staff and faculty is with your student. And so, it's important to know what those things are, but also I think instead of resisting them and being irritated by them, understand that they're there to help your student make this transition, and to kind of take that line of thinking can help your student. It's frustrating because it's going to require that you have some communication with your student about what that means. However, it's there to help your student become an adult and start to take care of their business, and start to communicate with entities just like they're going to have to do when they leave college and go out into the world, and work with employers, work with the government, work with different vendors for their life.
Yes. Because it's only 4 years.
Yeah, it happens really quickly.
Or if they go to grad school, but still, they need to have a handle on it. And it's better to find out freshman year than mom and dad hand-holding through another 4 years.
Right.
Sure.
When the stakes are high but low, right? There's a lot of protections in place, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So only because I've seen this. The mom who shows up on campus and asks to meet with their student's professor. Good or bad?
Bad.
Yes, thank you.
You're hurting your student. You're hurting your student. And I don't mean it like, I mean it both ways. I mean it like you're ripping your student off of the opportunity to advocate for themselves. I mean it in that way, but I literally mean it as a professor, as a person who sat in, especially with old school professors, who have been in being a professor for 60 years, if a parent shows up, they immediately are going to see that student as weak. And it's going to hurt that student's ability to have that person as a mentor and a reference. And your student's going to need that, right? And it's because the professor and the university do not perceive your student as a child. They perceive your student as an adult. So there's a difference in perception between you and the professor, and the professor's student is not you. So that idea of like, if you've always negotiated with your students' teachers in conferences when there are issues, that student now has to do that with the professor. It's, in fact, one of the most important things a student can learn to do during college.
Definitely. So I know that you know some of the most useful resources for parents to know about on campus, not necessarily for parents to use, but for them to say, if their child's having a problem, they can mention them to them. Hey, check this out, kind of thing.
Yeah. My number one piece of advice is I do believe in the sacred relationship between parents and students. And I think that, universities are going to attempt to sort of not to put a wedge, but sort of bust you up, right? So you're going to find that when you go to orientation, and you're going to sort of get relegated to the background. And I think that they do that because they don't want you to take the lead, but it's not that they don't want you to have a role. The role that you have is to be encouraging, supportive, and a resource. So you would function for your child in just the same way you would function for an adult friend who needs support, resources, encouragement, right? So you're giving advice in a form that's like, I'm knowledgeable about the resources that are out there, so I can advise and recommend, but I don't call and sign up for the resource for my friend, right? So you're going to take that same role for your child. So, and we can get into this a little bit more, but there are a couple things that I recommend that students have in place that make it easier to smoothly enter the college experience and to transition through the growing pains. But the most important ones are, your faculty, your advisors, your health center, and student disability services office. And if I had to put a hierarchy on those, I would say the advising office. And the reason for that is that the advising office is usually a really good turnstile. And what I mean by that is that they are the best referrers on the campus. They are going to be able to ask your student a handful of questions and most quickly discern what probably is the root cause of their challenge or their growing pain, and then directly connect them to the person they need to talk to. And depending on the level of engagement of the advising office, maybe even give them language to use to advocate for themselves. And so, hey, go to your professor's office hours and say, I am not doing well in your class and I'd like to know what I can do to improve my grade, right? Like we can actually language it for them. So advisors are really great that way. And I think that if I had to say one resource, I would find the academic support on the campus and build a relationship with them. The student builds a relationship with them, not the parent.
Absolutely. So let's see. As mothers, here's another question for you. Many of us have a default mode of worry, and I'm working to help my listeners with this for sure. But what are some challenges that we as parents may expect that our students might have at different moments in a semester?
Yeah. So I actually have sort of divvied up the semester into 4 transitional phases. Like I was saying earlier, when you're making the transition, you have it. Yeah, there you have it. So when you are making the transition to college, you're making it's a transition, right? So you're moving to a new environment, a new culture, a new community, but you're also doing that at the very same time that you're doing a lot of internal developmental work, right? So this is why this change is so hard, particularly hard for young people. And so the semester, I kind of busted up. If it's a 15-ish week semester, it's 4 different phases. So the very first phase is the summer camp phase. And this is the part, and I think this phenomena happens regardless if you live on campus or not. So it's only, even students who are commuting experience this phase. But this is especially acute for students who are living in a residence hall. And so this phase's primary objective is to figure out how to plug into the community, and it's to figure out how to make friends. And so it feels like they're at camp, right? It's like they're in a giant never-ending slumber party, and they're hanging out and they're staying up all night and they're doing silly stuff, and they're going to parties and they're going to like welcome days type events that the university has established to get them to connect, because even the university knows this. So the university's primary objective during this time is for your student to connect, because by the third week, if your student doesn't connect, they're going to want to transfer. And so that's a positive, because a student is trying to find their way and connect. However, there's a couple of negatives that come out of that. The first is, this is also when you're going to see the biggest homesickness, and you and your student are going to want your student to come home for the weekend. But if your student comes home for the weekend, every weekend for that first month, then you have just, and your student has just missed out on the key first line opportunity to connect to the university. You know? And then the second thing is, because your student is so focused on making friends and connecting, or feeling homesick and trying to stay connected to people back home, friends and you, then they aren't really paying too much attention to their academics. And they maybe haven't had any assessments in this time period, but they've gotten material. And they're going to feel like they've heard this material before, because from the outside, their classes look like classes they've taken. But the fatal mistake that students make is that just because it's the same subject doesn't mean you're going to be assessed on the same knowledge and information. In college, you're not being assessed on what you know or the facts like in high school. You're being assessed on applying and understanding and having more sophisticated understanding of the information. So a test is looking for the best answer, not the right answer. And so students are in this time not really preparing for what's to come in the second phase.
Very true.
I've learned this, over the years, the hard way of telling students in the fifth week, this is what you can expect. So just 3 bits of advice on that. So one, I always encourage students to give themselves time and space to make friends, and not to try to just make friends by the people who are in closest proximity to them. So they want to be friends with their roommate or their suite mate or the person who sits next to them in a gen ed class. Honestly, these are proximity friends who are going to turn over, they usually turn over. Your students more likely to find their very truest friends in organizations and involvement opportunities that they really care about, and in courses within their major, because those are going to be the people who actually have something in common with, not people they randomly got put next to in the structure of the university. The other advice I have for students is to never miss a class, and to begin working on assignments the moment they are assigned, not when they are due. And all 3 of those bits of advice come into play in this first phase, because they start to set up. Those are the best things they can do in that first phase to sort of navigate that level of challenge.
Excellent. Definitely.
The second phase, I think on the sheet I shared, I called it culture shock. I've recently shifted it to reality check, but same thing. And this is really when the I'm at summer camp begins to wear off, and they realize that they live here now and that these people are getting on their nerves. And homesickness can amplify because of this. The desire to want to come home may become even more acute, because not only are the people starting to get on their nerves because stress and pressure and weariness are starting to increase, but they're going to have their first round of assessments during this time. So their first round of exams and papers, and they're not going to do as well as they thought they were going to do, because they don't know how to prepare for college level academic work. They're going to use what worked for them in high school, and usually what worked for them in high school isn't going to work for them in college, even if they were at the top of their class. In fact, sometimes guys who are at the top of their class didn't really have to study actually do the worst in this first round, because they aren't equipped to have to do the work it takes. I find sometimes a B student who is really scrappy in high school fares really well during this time, and an A student who never lifted a finger and could do everything at the last minute really gets a rude awakening at this time. That's normal. The good news is that usually this first round of assessments are lowest value, because professors know this is what's going to happen. And so my advice is not to be like, oh, I'm a failure at college, what has happened? But to okay, now we know what to expect, and we can take some steps to improve our academics, our time management, our stress management. It's like a red flag to start putting into place the things that the student needs. Now, I know every parent out there is like, what can I do ahead of this moment to make sure this doesn't happen to my student? Nothing. I hate to say that there's nothing you can do really, because you can tell them until you're blue in the face, and they're going to hear it from orientation people. They're going to hear it from their professors, and they're going to think it doesn't apply to them until it happens. The most important thing you can do for your student is to make sure they have just-in-time information when the challenge emerges, so that the student can then repair and grow and learn from the mistake. You cannot prevent them from facing the adversity. The adversity is not bad. The adversity actually is good and is going to help them improve and grow. The trick is helping them learn to weather the adversity.
Excellent. And I'm giving a plug to those B students out there. I was one of you. We're scrappy. It's good.
Oh, me too. Real scrappy. I'm very resourcul, and it's a good thing.
I worked hard for my high B's and A's, really hard.
Yes. And it will help you in life.
It does.
The third phase I call the scramble. And this is like that 8 to 12 week period. And the reason it's the scramble is because of that first round of tests, maybe the student didn't do well. And now the student is like, ooh, I really need to figure this academic thing out. You may find too during this time that the students' commitments increase. They become busier. That may make them feel a little bit left out of things. It may also, an idea about changing a major usually emerges during this time, because at many universities, this is when advising begins. I know that's crazy, because you're like, what? We just got to college, but advising usually starts during this phase. And so a student feels a slight bit of pressure that they have to really commit to this thing, because they're going to sign up for another semester of classes. It is very common for students to change their major at some point during the first 3 semesters. I've seen statistics as high as 70% of students do change their major at some point in the first 3 semesters. So it's important to allow your student, I think, the space and time to explore this. And I think this is the linchpin of a successful college experience, is having a student be in a major that really truly inspires them, and having a clear idea of why they're in college for themselves. It has to be authentic and in alignment with who they really are. If that's true, a lot of the challenges of college sort of fall away, and a lot falls into place. If that's not true, the student can really struggle with motivation, with connecting, with using their college intentionally. And so you're going to usually see that start to emerge at this time, because either of academic performance, exposure to a major finally that they thought was a good match on paper, but now they've tested it and it's not, questioning about the classes they have to take next semester. Like, this first semester was fine, but oh man, now I have to take calculus to major in this. Oh, I don't want to take calculus. So they start to get more information and start to kind of be like, oh, I don't know.
Yeah. So 2 things on that. First of all, you have a really great podcast episode about this, about the major and motivation. I listened to it. It's great. So I'm going to have that in the show notes. And then I have one where I talk about majors, and I talk about the statistics and how parents are all freaking in high school about, does the college have the major and this? And I always talk about, like, find a college that fits them and has like a wide variety of majors because of that statistic. Because if they go in all in one and there isn't a variety, they're limited, and the transfer rates, I think, would be a little higher or just miserable.
Yeah. And a lot of schools are going away from having them just declare a major in the first semester, like really innovative, forward schools that they're doing away with the pressure on the major and giving more space for exploration. The thing is that it's one of these things that we want to front load this into a teenager. Teenager simply does not have enough experience and life experience and exposure to make these decisions. And so even if you make them take all the assessments in the world, an assessment is just not enough. An assessment is just one way to get information. They have got to have some life experiences to start to refine both who they are and how who they are connects to the world of work. And they don't know enough about who they are, and they don't know enough about the world of work to make those connections. And it just literally takes them, that's honestly what the college experience is for. The college experience is not just to like check a box and get a credential to get a job. That's an old model. This is like my soapbox. I'm getting on my soapbox because
I'm with you.
This is my soapbox.
I'm cheering her on. You can't see this, listeners, but I'm like, yes, go.
This is my passion. So my background's in history, and I talk a lot about economic history, and that's an antiquated model. Like, when a small percentage of people had access to college, and, it was a way to vet professionals, right? So you become a subset of professionals if you went to college. That is not what college is for now. College is to educate you in some really important transferable skills that employers desperately want. And those are things like communication, collaboration, the ability to pivot, the ability to problem solve, solve, the ability to communicate, and a college degree provides your student with those things. However, it's not ticking off the boxes like I got into the prestigious school and then I got the right major and then I got the right internship and then I got the right job. That's not really the model anymore. It's what you do during that time. And so that idea of like, I just get in the right school, get in the right major, and then I can just party the rest of the time and then I'm set for life. That's the 70s. That's not how it is.
Oh, you're making people sad.
So they have to do something with it. And so this is where
No.
I'm sorry.
Probably not parents. The parents are going, whoo!
Yeah. But that's why picking something that truly aligns with them is essential. Like, I think that is, and that's what I help students do. That's what my work is. My coaching work is helping students figure out their life and then using college to make it happen, because I think it is the tie that binds. It is the thing.
Absolutely. Preach. Go.
Yeah. So on that note, the final phase is the time to get serious phase. And this is the one, you asked me, parents worry. This is the phase that is worrying to parents. So all the stress, all the poor sleep, all of the kind of depletion from the transition of the college experience sort of comes to a head in this phase. So this can be a really beautiful phase where they really can like move their grades really high and they can really do cool projects. They can really start to get to know their professors. They can get really involved in organization and kind of get their stride. Or it's the phase where students want to drop out, are hospitalized for mental health breakdowns, become very ill with things like the flu, pneumonia, right? And so the reason for the negative things are the high stress, low immunity because of the stress and the poor self-care that happens, coupled with the highest value assignments being at this time of the semester, can kind of come to a head. And this is also when they come home for Thanksgiving and you're going to be like, what's happened to my baby? Because the stress is they're going to want to they're like in their room trying to do their paper that's due the
Right.
Monday after, Thanksgiving break, because there's only a week and a half of the semester left. And that last week is when everything's due. And you're irritated because you're like, I just want to hang out with my baby on Thanksgiving. And it's just the nature of how the semester is structured that causes that. And I'm telling you this because this is the most challenging time of the semester for them, but also for you, I think, as a parent.
Thanksgiving is a joke. Now, and my daughter's out.
It's not real.
So it's, 4 days. It's the worst time to travel. So anymore, I just go down to where she is, and my husband's we're going to go something local there because she has so much work. It's just not even, she feels bad if we go places with the family because she wants to write her papers that are due. It's just, be prepared for that, Mom, because that was shocking to me. It's things you don't remember when you're a student in college, but Katy's right on.
Well, and I think things have changed a little bit. Like back when some of us may have been in college, the model, especially even in the freshman year, was a midterm and a final, and there were fewer assignments. Now there's a lot more assignments, and it's by design to help your student have as many opportunities to influence a positive grade as possible, but it creates a lot more work than what you maybe experienced when you went to college.
Yeah. Yes. Be warned.
It's actually a retention initiative, but
it's big time. It is big. So my listeners, Katy has shared a download printable of all of the transitions with us. So make sure you go to my website. I'm going to have the link at the end of my podcast, and you can have that printed for you to remind you. Yes. Excellent. All right. So Katy, if you could have all of the entering college freshmen parents in one ginormous room and had the ability to give them one piece of advice, what would it be?
Use the university's resources. And also any other supplemental resources out there. There's a lot of them. This is a difficult challenge for you, student and parent. And the fact that it's challenging is not a sign you don't belong there, right? I think there's that perception, like I hear students say this, if I got in, then that's enough. I should be able to just do this thing easily. That's a sign that I'm capable of doing this. And so I hear from parents all the time, I really need to enlist you. I really wish you told this to my student because they don't listen to me. I tell them this stuff, but they don't listen to me. So the way around that is by enlisting support outside of the family of other adults and mentors, just as you would as an adult. Find professionals to assist you through the process of transition or a challenging experience or an opportunity. Like you would hire a coach, right? Like for this transition into becoming an empty nest parent, or you would hire a financial planner or a realtor or a fitness instructor for any kind of thing you want to achieve. It's the same thing for your college student. So you can hire outside coaches like me to help them with certain things. There's executive functioning coaches. There are tutors. There are people like me that help them figure out what they want to do with their life. But then the university itself has a slew of people. So I would say the most important thing is finding a mentor on your campus, like students finding an adult mentor. And that person can be a professional on the campus, or they can be a faculty member on the campus. I would encourage an adult mentor over a student mentor. Those student mentors are helpful as well, making sure that the student is engaging in the experience of college and not fearful of sort of popping their head up and saying, I need help. I don't know. Where do I go for? What kinds of resources do we have to help me with this? And I think that download also has, kind of depending on what the challenge is, the different offices that are like the go-to kind of generic offices at most campuses, right? Depending on what the issues are. So I think that's the top most important thing, is to really understand what your university is offering to support your student, but also understand that when you are thinking about developing and supporting your student, what that means to you and what that means to the university are different. So the university's objective is to retain, so keep your student there and make them persist, so get them to graduate. Your objective is for your student to develop into a happy, successful, amazing person, right? So sometimes if your little B student with a major is sort of internally struggling, and the university is not going to necessarily know that, because based on their metrics, your B student who might be internally struggling with what they want to do and with their motivation isn't showing up on their radar, because on the surface, she looks perfectly fine. She's got a major, she's making good grades, she's attending class, she's in a club, check, check, check. She's on the road to persistence and retention, right? And so that's how a lot of people get out of college with a degree and good grades. And they're like, now what? Why did I just do that? Because there's a disconnection between what you're doing during college and how to sort of maximize the investment. So yes, you want to use the resources on your university, but you also have to understand that you have to advocate for yourself, and you have to kind of be very strategic about kind of getting your foot in the door for the opportunities. So that's my biggest takeaway, is engage with the investment of college itself. And then of course there's all kinds of other things too, but I think that's the best entry point, especially during the first semester, is to just be really connected.
It's great advice. And I think it's something that's easier for someone who's very social and extroverted. And the students who, tend to sit back, I think parents need to understand that it might take them a little longer, and they might need more encouragement to get out there and talk to other people. Because I have seen that. I know I'm the kind of person, I'll talk to anybody. Although I'm introverted, I have my threshold. But there are other people who just sit back, and it might take a year before they find someone they're comfortable with, which I don't know how you battle that. Do you have any ideas?
Well, universities themselves will have programs trying to connect students to mentors. So a lot of students don't sign up for that kind of stuff because they want to seem cool. And they're like looking to their left and looking at their right to see what other students are doing. Because in high school, I think we've been trained to conform for survival. But in college, you don't want to conform for survival. You have to not conform to survive. It's the opposite. Right. And so that conditioning, especially in mainstream, big public high school, to conform to survive, I think in some ways, when I see students take off like rockets, it's because they found their own little groove, and they're starting to understand who they are, and they're starting to be cool with that. And that quirkiness and that uniqueness is how they're connecting with quirky professors and upper class students who have the same passion as them. And you can be in a club that's only about this one anime show that, nobody else at your high school likes, but at your college, there's 10 people who do. And so suddenly your geekiness and your quirks and your nonconformity are your superpowers, but you're not used to that yet, which is why giving space to kind of understand who you are is really important.
Excellent. I think you have the tweet of the episode. In college, you don't want to conform for survival. I was like, yes, that's it.
No.
Like that should be, we should have that in our head when we start applying and then just going for our students. Oh my goodness, that's great. Well, this is great. Oh my gosh. So I'm a subscriber of your podcast, College Hood Advice. And as I mentioned earlier in the intro, I love it. So can you tell my audience a bit about your podcast?
Yeah. So my podcast is a way to get I think of it as curating experts and resources and tools, techniques, strategies, stories to help students kind of gather all the information and tools they need to thrive during their college experience. And so we talk about a wide range of topics. I mean, I try to cover a very wide range of experiential topics, from everything from sort of college life type issues all the way to productivity, major, and everything in between. And so you can listen to it anywhere you listen to podcasts. You can, it's a great way it's short format normally. So it's 10 to 30 minute episodes, and that's on purpose so that a student can listen to it on their walk to class, right? And so I think it's a really great way. A lot of times parents are like, I want you to tell these things to my student. It's the podcast is the way to get me in your students' ears. The podcast episodes are very strategically released to be in rhythm with the academic year. And so I'm always releasing a podcast that's relevant to what's in the mind of most students at that moment of the year. It's helpful for students across all 4 years. It's not just for first semester freshmen. And so I would recommend the best way to get me in the ears of your student is to have them subscribe to the podcast and getting in the habit of listening to it weekly. And then there's other ways to engage with my email list. I have free resources there to kind of help them take their first steps towards cultivating some academic habits that are healthy and more sustainable. Instead of, thinking of them in terms of right and wrong, I think about it in terms of authenticity and sustainability. So you need to find things that work for you, but they need to be sustainable. They need to be working for you. And by working for you, I mean, like you're sleeping, you're well, and you're getting the outcomes you want. And I think sometimes working for you, we think of it's just getting the outcomes you want, and it's not. You have to be sleeping well and getting the outcomes you want, or else what you're doing isn't working for you. And so a way for a student to kind of get information. So young adults are different than teenagers, and that young adults actually want to hear research-based information from experts, not their peers. So teenagers want to hear information from their peers. Young adults start to want to hear information from experts. And so that's what we do. We collect together experts from all over the country to get that information in the ear of students. So it doesn't just sound like some random advice mom's giving me.
It's true. I've sent episodes to my daughter. Hey, who's editing this podcast? And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. Really, moms, you need to get your children to subscribe to her podcast because it's going to help everyone. Definitely.
Yeah. And a lot of it is reinforcing to the work of the university. So it seemed to augment. So we refer a lot to the resources on universities, where to go, who to ask, who's there to help you. Yeah.
Okay. And as I mentioned earlier, Katy has been kind enough to share a printable document with us. So head to my website to pick it up today. It's a fantastic transition map of your child's first semester in college and resources. So you are going to want this. Pick it up at www.youremptynestcoach.com/P28. So that's P for podcast and the number 28. Katy, is there anything else you would like to share with my amazing future empty nest friend today?
I think we've covered it. I think the other thing is just remember that a good rule of thumb is always ask yourself, am I supporting my student to do XYZ? Or am I doing XYZ for my student? So when you're about to take an action, ask yourself that question. And if the answer is I'm doing it for my student, stop yourself and then think about how can I support my student to do XYZ? And that will help kind of guide you in this transition.
Excellent advice. That's great. Okay. So before you go, I have 4 questions that I ask every guest of mine. They're the most important part of the podcast, I swear. So first of all, waffles or pancakes?
Pancakes.
Ooh, anything on them?
I like pancakes every way they come, but I like New Hampshire maple syrup. My parents live in New Hampshire, and my mom is generous enough to send me that syrup, and that's what I want on them.
That sounds so good. And what is one item you couldn't live without, and why?
You know what? I really thought about this a lot, and I don't know that I have one.
Really?
I'm pretty scrappy. I'm like, I could probably figure it out without it. I mean, the internet, because then I couldn't talk to you. If we lost the internet, I'd be really bummed.
I'm there too. Yes. I'm ready to live in an RV in a tent permanently, but I need the internet.
Exactly. Yes. I could be a minimalist with the internet.
Yes, there we go. That's it. So do you have an all-time favorite movie?
Yes, it's The Princess Bride.
Oh, so good. So good.
I don't know why. I watched it when I was a kid in someone's basement, and I just captured my imagination, and I've loved it ever since.
So great. I love it. So, okay. And you have an hour of alone time. No one will bother you. What is your go-to thing to do?
I have small children, so I'm going to sleep.
Excellent answer. That's what every mother of young children should say, I swear.
Nobody's tapping you on the shoulder at 5 a.m.
Well, this has been so much fun. Thanks so much for being here. And thanks for everything that you do to assist college students and their parents on their journey through college.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been so much fun.
Excellent.
That was so much fun. I highly recommend that you mention this podcast to your college student, as I've mentioned before, as Katy has a ton of great topics that your student will find helpful in the years to come. You may find Katy's podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. It is titled Collegehood Advice. And you may also find her on Instagram or Facebook with the handle, you guessed it, Collegehood Advice. All of these details will be included in my show notes, along with a link to her website, collegehoodadvice.com. Thanks for joining Katy and I today. And don't forget to download the printable that she gave us. It includes the first semester transition map and college resources. Please don't hesitate to fly on over to our Facebook group. Our name is Green Popsicle Sticks. Want to know why? Listen to episode number 17 or head to my website, youremptynestcoach.com/community for links to join our flock. Why should you join our group? Well, the adjustment to not having your kiddos at home full-time isn't always easy, but it sure can be a ton more fun with a flock of friends. We look forward to seeing you there. And if you are ready to begin the journey to find future you and use her as your GPS, sign up for my free program, The Empty Nest, A Guide to Discovering Future You. Curious about it first? Check out episode 13. It covers the high-level content of my free program, which includes videos and worksheets to allow you to dive deeper. The questions I have for you in this episode are, what are you most focused on for your child's first semester? And my second question, if you attended college, what are some defining moments that you remember from your first semester? As always, I provide content to make you think, my empty nest friend. My hope is that I am able to provide you with thoughts that positively impact your life. You'll also find show notes for this and every episode on my website.
My next episode is all about future you, and I don't know what to do next.
If my show has helped you in any way, please share it with one other person you think it will help too. You'll be giving them a free gift. Thanks for your time and energy with that, and thanks so much for listening, my empty nest friend. Remember, you are amazing. Or head to my website,